I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. I'm speaking with Troy today. Troy, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It's wet here today, though. I'm feeling a little soggy.
Yeah, it's raining here too, man.
Well, listen, this is pretty much the microphone is yours. Just start me off at the beginning, kind of what you were doing when things began for the first time and kind of lead me into the situation.
Right. Okay. Well, I was in high school. I was going into my senior year in high school. It was probably 98, 99. It was before the internet really exploded. I mean, we had the old dial-up internet and everything, but it was before. All you see on TV was maybe an old Leonard Nimoy In Search Of or something, like that. So we always. I grew up in rural southern West Virginia, in the coal fields, and all we did pretty much was hunting fish all the time. That's all we ever did, and spent my whole life in the woods, and never seen anything that scared me. I don't know if you know what ramps are or not, but in Appalachia, a ramp is like it's a really, really strong wild onion, almost a garlicky deal.
Oh, okay.
And I've been in the woods before at getting really late and been surrounded by coyotes, and that'll freak you out a little bit. So I know what they sound like. I know all the animals in the woods. But this particular summer, we were fishing in an area called Little Clear Creek. It's way back in the cut, as we say, but it's miles and miles away from anywhere. And we've been fishing all day since way early in the morning. And pretty much we'd gotten bored. We weren't catching anything. My little brother, he never quits. He's always after it. Whether he's catching anything or not, he's always after it. But we get down into this bend in the creek, and when I say creek, I mean a little tiny mountain stream. It's not fast-moving water or big. It's probably 15, 20 feet across, max, sure, in the widest places. And me and my buddy, I don't want to say any names. He's pretty successful back home, and I don't want to drag him into it. But
no, that's fine.
We were sitting in the water, kind of just up to our sitting down up to our chest. My little brother's on the bank. He's tying a lure on, and we're screwing around a little bit, splashing around and stuff, and we hear something just rip off the side of the mountain. It wasn't trying to be quiet at all. It was just tearing, like it was breaking stuff as it came down, and there was a high wall on the side of the river bank that we were almost setting up against, and we couldn't see up the hill. It was a big mountain that kind of comes down into this hollow that the creek runs through, and we're kind of like, what is that? And we start hearing this god awful screaming. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It sounded like a man kind of screaming to the top of his lungs, mixed with like a roar. Yeah. I mean, you can feel it in your chest, and that instantly kind of like, what in the hell could that be? And we look up at my brother, and he is just frozen, just, solid white. And he's looking up on top of the high wall, and about this time we see his eyes look straight up in the air, and this huge rock. I mean, the rock is probably about the size of a briefcase or something. A big flat rock just came and smacked right in between me and my friend, and then this tree. It was a big poplar tree, probably. I say as big around as a basketball, but it probably wasn't that big. But it was a big tree nonetheless, and it starts just swaying back and forth very, very violently. And at that point, we ran out of the water and stopped and turned around and looked, and there is this. The only thing that I can say to describe it is there was a monster standing there, And I know it might sound, childish for somebody to say monster, but that's exactly what we were looking at. All my life, I've been led to believe that there's no such thing as monsters, but lo and behold, here we are. We're staring at this thing. It's standing upright on two legs. It's not, it's not 10 feet tall. It's probably 6.5 feet tall, maybe 7 feet. But the sheer size of this thing was enormous. It had to have weighed, every bit of 400 or 500 pounds. Enormous. Wow. And it stretched its arms way out. Have you seen somebody get in a fight or something, and they kind of, hit their chest, say come on,
Yeah, right.
This thing slaps its chest, and then it gets down almost in like a linebacker stance, and jumps at us and slides to a stop on all fours, and then from that point, it just went absolutely crazy. It was shredding everything it could get its hands on, tearing at the earth, and just going nuts. Now, it never turned its back on us, but it was putting on a huge show and screaming the whole time. We were petrified. We were froze. We couldn't move. And it jumped around and screamed. The scream, the noises that this thing made are just, never have I ever heard anything that I could even compare it to. And the look in this thing's eyes, it meant business. If there's no doubt in my mind, it could have easily, crossed that little creek and tore us to shreds.
Good.
But it didn't.
Right.
It just stayed on that side of the bank. But obviously it was trying to scare us off, and it did the trick. I was actually talking to my brother about it just recently, and asking him if he could remember, what all he could remember about it, and he remembered the same details as I did. That it had a very leathery type face. Of course, it was covered in hair. The only part of its body that didn't have really any hair on it was its face. But what stuck out the most, and even he said when I was talking to him about it, he said, "Do you remember the nose on that thing?" I said, "Yeah, man. Yeah, I remember the nose. The nostrils on this thing were huge. Now, I don't know if it was flaring its nostrils out or if the nostrils are always that big, but it looked like you have how a pig snout is, how large the nostrils are.
Right.
That's what the only thing that we could compare it to was the snout of a pig. But don't get me wrong, it didn't look anything like a pig in the face.
Right.
It had the anatomy of a man. Proportionately, it had the anatomy of a man. Now, it had very, very long arms.
Longer than what a man's would be.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, definitely. And the thickness, this thing was so thick that it blew our minds. We've been in the woods our whole life. We know what a black bear looks like, and the only thing that that in that neck of the woods that could possibly even come close to being that size would be a black bear, which is nowhere. I mean,
not to mention the behavior. I mean, a bear. I've never seen a bear throw a tantrum like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the time, 10 out of 10 times, a black bear is going to run from you. They're gonna get as far away from you as possible. And matter of fact, any animal in the woods, at least where I'm from, any wild animal is going to put as much distance between themselves and you as possible. I've never had anything come at me in the woods. I've been deer hunting and have a deer come at me, but they didn't know I was there. But in the minute that they seen me, they were gone. This thing knew we were there, and it was coming to.
Do you remember? Sorry, do you remember about what time of day this was?
Yeah, it was right before dusk. It was probably about an hour before the sun had went down fully.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were getting ready to head out, and it was quite a long walk out. So it was right before dusk, and we left all of our tackle up there.
Now
my brother actually.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask.
My brother.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I just had a quick question. It's a fascinating story. I want to hear what you have to say, but I had a question. When you heard the vocals, were they coming from the same direction as all this noise, the brush being torn up, coming at you guys?
Oh, yeah. It was coming from right off the top of the hill.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it was coming from the same direction, absolutely.
I was just trying to get an idea if there was just one or more than one.
We've talked about that, and the only thing we saw was one. I didn't see another or hear another. We just saw the one. But of course, it was throwing such a fit that every bit of attention we had was focused solely on that. I mean, something could have walked right up behind us and we wouldn't have known it.
Now, just for just quick clarification. Now, it was the creek was between you and the creature, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was about 20 feet at the max between us after we got out of the water. Before we got out of the water, it couldn't have been more than 10 feet.
That's not much comfort, is it?
No, but for us, we could see the look on my brother's face that there was, a high wall there, and we couldn't see up and over the high wall.
Yeah.
But we knew there was something there because my brother, he was just terrified. He was terrified. And actually, when we ended up peeling out of there, he was in the process of tying a spinner on his line, and he took off and had that spinner in his hand, and he ran, and that spinner dug into the meat of his hand, and we ran until the lines. I guess he had the bell open on his fishing rod,
mm-hmm.
and when that line ran out and caught, it snapped the line because when we got back to the truck, we had to we just clipped the axe. There's 30 yards of fishing line on the end of, that he drug, and the treble hook was dug way into his hand. We had to clip it out with pliers.
Good Lord.
But of course, we didn't worry about doing any of that until we were off that mountain.
Yeah, I think I would have dropped everything too and ran.
Yeah, we never went back. Never went back to get it. I've been back on that mountain, since then, but I never had. I was curious, but there was no way. You couldn't pay me to go back to that spot. No way. And I know that whatever that was all over that. I mean, it's not just sitting in that one spot, but that
Right.
there is no way. Whatever we got, I don't know if we just got too close to. He was defending something. He didn't want us anywhere near there. I don't know if they had. Obviously, if there's one, there's more. He's not just the only animal of that type. And I say animal because this thing was. You'll hear people say that. It was too human-like. It looked like no. This thing was an animal. I mean, it was crazy, territorial, flat-out animal, and there's not a doubt in my mind that if we'd have stuck around there and pushed it, it would have killed us without hesitation.
Yeah, that's quite a display. I mean, I've interviewed people with a lot of different displays, and that's, I got to say, one of the more violent-sounding ones.
Oh yeah, me and my brother were talking, and he mentioned, he said, all these people who want to go out in the woods and try to find one and feed them apples and be their buddy. He's like, that's crazy. He says, let them go ahead. If they ever saw what we did, they would drop that idea pretty darn quick.
Yeah, that's in my opinion, that's a pretty silly approach to any kind of wild creature.
Yeah, I mean, these things are definitely, from what I've seen, they're definitely more, I don't know if there's, I mean, of course, they're probably very highly intelligent, but they're no doubt they're an animal. And there's no, you hear people talk about, the maybe mystical powers that they have, or psychic power. Baloney, man. Yeah. I think people just get so scared when they see something like this that they think that maybe that could be an explanation for what's happened. But
sure, I think it depends on how they're predisposed, to looking at the world. And there's also a lot of people that make those statements that have never actually seen one of these things. They tell people they have,
right.
But I don't believe it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's 100% flesh and blood. They're just the same as a bear is. But I think that they're just so adept. They're so in tune and used to staying away from. I can imagine that man would be the only enemy that they could have in the wild. Their biggest threat.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
These dudes are they're masters of the woods.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when
it's just,
people say that oh geez, we've known about them for 5-6 decades publicly. On a large scale, so how come we haven't gotten closer and yada yada yada. They don't understand that something that doesn't want human contact, except in a situation like you were in, and even my own encounters, were these kind of chance situations, and thankfully mine wasn't like yours. I think I would have wet myself. But if they're either going to put on a display, they're going to take off quickly, or if they're there, there's a reason they're there in close contact with people. It's not, they're not unaware of people being around. That's for certain.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. It's not like that we were in uncharted territory. Someplace where no human has ever set foot before. I mean, there's coal mines up there, and they have coal trucks, running in and out of there all the time. But we were back, off the road and pretty deep into the mountain, and whatever we were messing around, whatever we were getting close to, I don't know if we just happened on where he was at right then, and he was in a bad mood or what, and he made sure that he ran us out of there. There's no doubt about that.
These things typically start feeding about that time, right around plus or minus an hour before sunset and sunrise. And a lot of times what happens is you'll run into a sentry, and a lot of primates, large,
That's
apes
sentry,
essentially
like a lookout.
Yeah, kind of like a lookout. While the rest of the group is off in an area feeding, and this is very common among primates, to use a sentry to alert the rest of the group of approaching danger. And humans definitely pose a threat to these guys, so sounds like you encountered one that was very aggressive when it came to alerting the rest of the group and making certain that you guys didn't go any further than that creek.
Yeah, right. Now we've talked about that. Like, if there had only been one of us up there that seen this, would it have made any difference that there was only one of us as opposed to being three of us there?
Could have been a real problem. Because in a one-on-one situation, with these guys, it's kind of a numbers game. If there are more of you than them, you might get a display like in your situation. They might just take off. If it's a closer match in numbers, they might tend to be more aggressive. It has happened on occasion, so it just really depends on the disposition and then what's going on. You don't really see what's going on behind that creature. That's sort of the reason for that kind of behavior that it's exhibiting.
Yeah, and I was also thinking the size difference. I know in the Pacific Northwest, you hear people's encounters and they're just being 10, 12, 10 feet tall and 1,000 pounds. I mean, this thing wasn't no small guy by any means. It was it was still enormous. It just in as far as how thick this thing was. I mean, and it had. I've said this before, and it didn't have a pot belly, but it had a bigger stomach, I don't even really know how to explain it. It's just looked like a tree stump,
Yeah. Well, one thing to remember too is, and it's something a lot of people don't know, is there are more than one variety of these things. In the Northwest, we have one type. In your part of the country, there's typically the another type.
Right. Now, I've wondered about that. What is how are the classifications? Is it all size, or is it is it behavior, or is there four? I've heard four types.
Right. I have contacts who did and do work for the government that are involved in this stuff, and I'm going to be doing a book probably next year as I get more information from my sources. But what I was told by people who have dealt directly with these things was that there are four, maybe even a fifth variety, and a lot of that is like, even with other animal populations and even human populations, is if a breeding pool is separated from the rest of a species, you're going to get differences. That's how that's how you get subspecies of groups. There are two major groupings with these things. One is kind of like what you see in the Patterson film, and the real distinguishing feature is the teeth. In what you see in the Patterson film, doesn't have canines. The other major grouping does have large canines, which is actually, and again, it's another it's a feature you see in large primates, and most primates actually have large canines. So it's not out of the question that one species would have something like that.
I can tell you this: we got a very good look at his mouth, and he had a good set of teeth on him.
Did he have larger,
they weren't.
Did he have upper and lower canines? Large canines?
Yes, it looked like on the bottom part, and also something that I discussed just recently with my brother. Just going back over everything with him, trying to to try to jog our memories. But we both did specifically remember that it seemed like on the lower left-hand side of this thing's mouth, it was missing several teeth on the lower left-hand part of his face. It had canines on the two top canines and one on the bottom. But
Okay.
the left side of his face, he was missing teeth out of the bottom on the left side, and he was, this thing was peeling his lips back. And I say he because I keep saying he because it was most definitely a he.
I was just going to ask you if at any time it pulled its lips back, baring its teeth at you.
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah. And its mouth was so big that it looked like it could easily have just fit our head in its mouth.
In anthropology,
easily.
In anthropology circles, they call that a lip flip. It's a direct challenge when they pull their teeth back, showing the canines.
Oh man, it definitely it definitely scared the heck out of us because it you when you see a dog snarling and stuff like that, you know it means business, and just the guttural growls and just the horrific noise that this thing was making on top of peeling his lips back like that to show his teeth, and we could see, you see his tongue, we could see everything.
And you said he grabbed everything within reach, and was what was he doing with that material?
Throwing it in the air, ripping it down. Any kind of little saplings he was grabbing hold of, he was just ripping them, throwing them up over his head, behind him. I mean, he was in destroy everything mode.
Yeah.
He was even grabbing handfuls of earth and throwing it up in the air, and hopping around, jumping around.
See, and again, that's a very primate type behavior when it comes to a territorial display.
Yeah, this thing was it came down the mountain. My brother seen it coming down the mountain. Again, me and my friend didn't see it coming down the mountain, but he said he seen it coming down the mountain, and he said it was running on two legs just like a man would.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was in the middle of throwing its fit, it was crouched down, but it also stood up and stretched his arms out and looked like it puffed its chest out. It was like he was making himself as big as he could possibly be with his arms outstretched.
Which is a dominant.
Enormous.
Yeah, it's a dominant display. They're, it's just like with humans. They say like if you encounter a bear or something, you try to make yourself look as big as you can to establish who's tougher, basically.
Yeah, no, I told you I mentioned that I kept saying he. I kept referring to it as a he because there was obviously, we obviously saw male genitalia. Now you would think that something this size would have a pretty large set on him.
Mm-hmm.
It like a man would generally, like a great big man you would think would be bigger. But it proportionately it wasn't very big.
Well, and typically
it was obvious.
If you go back into it with wild creatures, humans are the only exception to that rule. When you look at other primate species, their genitalia is typically small.
No, I mean we joked about that after the fact. Being kids. Of course, we didn't have anything funny to say when we were right there. But
no, you wouldn't want to embarrass him.
Yeah, piss him off real good. But yeah, we talked about that afterwards, and there was no doubt that it was definitely a male, but it was not what you would expect, for anybody that would just be thinking about this species. It was surprising, honestly. It was that might have been. It was something that we go back and talk about how we were so close that we could see, we could see the color of the inside of the mouth.
Yeah.
We could see everything. And, this thing didn't have like silky smooth hair. And it was a dirty animal. I won't say mangy because it didn't look, it had a pretty consistent hair all over its body, but it was, it was littered with, debris and it was matted, like you would expect something that lived in the wilderness would be. It was just.
Yeah, the first two that I saw were exactly the same way. They were, I remember all the debris from, forest debris, parts of leaves, little twigs, things like that, and it was kind of matted and dirty looking.
The first two, how many of you actually saw?
A total of 3. Two the first time, one the third time, or one the second time.
Oh, man. How old were you?
I was 16 the first time.
Oh, okay. You're about the same age as me then.
And it was about the same distance away that you were.
Oh my gosh! But you say did it carry on like the one that I?
No, actually, it was. I come through the tree line, through some low hanging limbs and into a clearing, and here this thing was. It was just kind of standing there, moving some leaves around with its right foot. And when it saw me, it stopped and just kind of stared at me. And I thought, okay.
It was moving leaves around with its foot.
Yeah, almost like it was kind of casually looking for something, but
wow, just tooling around with its foot. That's interesting.
I had a .22 rifle in my hands, and I just thought, oh crap!
Oh no,
what's this?
Yeah.
And I ended up shooting in the air just to hopefully scare it away or something, and then it continued to stand there and look at me, and then I heard another one come around from my right rear. From some brush.
Oh my God!
And then it was time to leave. So
you saw that one too?
Oh yeah. It walked over and stood by the first one.
The gunshot didn't spook him at all, huh?
No, it didn't seem to.
My gosh! I mean, if I'd had a rifle or anything, I to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have shot. This thing was so damn scary. I'd have been afraid. I would have pissed it off.
Oh yeah, I always wonder if
especially if I'd had a .22. Oh my, that'd have probably been a mistake.
I always think
fire at something like that.
Oh, no doubt. I always think if I had my hunting rifle or my 12 gauge shotgun, if I would have shot, and I kind of think I wouldn't because that's kind of a scary situation. The first time you see something like that. The only thing that was going through my mind is, what the hell is this, and a whole lot of fear behind that. So,
my goodness, yeah. And then the like I was telling my brother, if there's one of these things, there had to have been more. And you would think, just seeing how like the Great Apes and stuff operate. They're not loners. They're always, either in a family group or something like that.
Right.
If you were to actually shoot one of these things,
I think you'd be in trouble.
And oh my goodness, I wonder if there's any. I haven't, done nearly the research you have, but I wonder if there's any documented cases where somebody's actually shot one and actually dropped it. And had that happen where others have come out, then that's...
We'll chat off air sometime about all that. There's some information I can tell you.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be great. That'd be terrifying. Oh my goodness! Wow, yeah, that would be terrifying. I can't imagine, but I know that. I have an uncle that still to this day still lives up in the area, and when I first told him about it, it was probably that within the same week that we'd seen it. I told him about it, and of course he was, my dad's brother. He'd give me a hard time, and he'd call me an idiot and laugh at me and make fun of me, and I left and went to college and came back one weekend and he was at the house. He worked with my dad, and he pulled me over to the side and he said, "You remember what you told me about seeing up there on the creek?" And I was like, "Yeah, here it comes again. He's getting ready to lay into me with some more, And And he's like, I didn't believe you at the time. He said, but he said, I'm sorry for making fun of you. I really am. I tried to get him to elaborate on it, but he wouldn't say much except that he had seen something leaving his house about 4 a.m. Coming to work. He had seen something run across the road in front of him.
Wow.
And he said that the only thing I could get him to tell me was that it was. He said, I know that nobody would be out there screwing around, that early in the morning with their kids.
Yeah.
So whatever he was talking about, he had seen back there. He's seen more than one, and he'd seen a big one and some little ones.
Oh, is
or
that
a
right?
little one.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what he said. I can't. I know that nobody would be up there screwing around that early in the morning with their kids.
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to understand. I was like, "What are you talking about? What are you?" And he was almost too scared. Almost that I was gonna turn around and start making fun of him about it, the way he did me. But he was terrified about it. And he still to this day, he lives back there quite a ways, but he won't go outside at night without being armed, and he's got a totally new attitude about it. Totally new attitude.
It tends to change your outlook, let me tell you.
Oh man, I'd spent my entire life up to that point, it was just that, monsters aren't real, but when I seen that, I still have nightmares about it. And my wife, the first time I told her about it, she kind of laughed about it, but she doesn't laugh about it anymore. She knows that I take that very, very seriously, because that there's no way that I'm scared to death. I have 3 sons, and to think about them being, I don't want them to miss out on their childhood growing up in the outdoors, and things like that. But it's a whole new element to worry about.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, you don't want the kids to miss out on the outdoors, but then you think, geez, do I want to put them in that kind of a situation?
Right, exactly. And you can't talk about it. People are going to think you're crazy. And then I'll talk to my wife. Would say, well, then why? How come if in the beginning she's like, if these things are real, how come the government's always saying that they're not? And I was trying to think about how much money there is that they would have to lose. Mm-hmm. In the forest industry alone, like with endangered species and stuff, that if you think about it, that could potentially shut down an entire industry.
Yeah, there's some pretty big repercussions.
Right, and lawsuits. I mean, people in natural and national parks and
mm-hmm.
and things like that. I mean,
it's a pretty big can of worms.
Endless.
Absolutely.
Oh man.
Absolutely.
It's hard to even think about, but I wonder if the day will ever come whenever they have to. I'm sure it will eventually. Where they'll have to admit,
more than likely.
that it's going to come, but who knows when and how many times it's going to be, tried to be covered up. And what really upsets me is the mockery that comes with especially people, the idiots, these people who say that they go out in the woods and that they have a troop of Bigfoot
right.
out in the woods that they've been going out and visiting every weekend for the last 10 years, and they speak their own language. It's a combination of clicks and grunts
mixed
with facial expressions and sign language.
Yeah.
Idiots, man.
There's every form of weirdo out there. There's even the new ones. No, we shouldn't say new ones, but kind of the new. I don't know if it's new or not. I mean, I don't really pay attention to a lot of these, wannabe Bigfoot hunters, or people that get involved in this, but really, I know they don't have any experience with it. They claim they do, but they don't.
Like the BFRO.
But there's the lately I've been hearing things. Some of the people calling them, ghosts or demons, and just nonsense.
Oh no.
They don't have any explanation themselves, not any real explanation, because they've never seen anything. So these are the labels they try to use, and it's really kind of a distraction from the real stuff that's going on.
Right. They call them an apparition, or I've heard people say that they're actually demons, and fallen angels, and this and that. I mean, these things are flesh and blood animals. They are definitely animals. There's nothing magical about them. I mean,
absolutely.
You can't trample on like a Native American's way of thinking. About them. They have to be respected.
Sure.
You have to respect a creature like this, because if you don't, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Big
trouble, Jack. Yeah, I respect the work you do. I mean, it's got to be intense being out there. I know you do a lot of field research, and that's got to be just so intense. I don't know how you keep going back and doing that after seeing that. I keep saying monster because I keep falling back.
I guess I'm just stubborn.
Yeah, you must be, man.
I'm out there, my nose is to the ground, and speaking of that, I've got a really excellent artist that I'd like to connect you with. He's doing some work for me on the different types, and I'll send you a couple examples of the work he's done. He can really do justice to what you saw.
Absolutely, yeah. I've looked around the internet, and I've tried to find the pictures of that could relate to what I've seen, but the only thing I can really do to give it justice is like take a certain part of a certain picture, like the brow from this picture, and the jaw from this picture, and the nose from this picture.
Yeah. And
it would have to be all switched to, but like you said, the different species, I guess that it comes with. There's not a doubt in my mind that some of these drawings that you'll find are accurate, because I probably would have made fun of somebody for saying that they saw something like that until I did, and it's just it's unreal. And go ahead.
I think it's just kind of the way people are geared. I probably would have too, had I not been. I was 14 the first time I saw footprints, and then 2 years later I actually ran into 2 of the 3 individuals we found footprints of. So.
Wow.
And people, my family and everything made fun of us after just seeing footprints, and these were physical things on the ground that me and my friend, and we found them and went to another of our friend's house, and his brothers and sisters and dad came out with us and took pictures and stuff, and he told us, because we didn't know, we never heard the word Bigfoot before then, and
the fellow's dad came out with you guys?
He did. Well, we saw this. We found these footprints, and it was on a line of railroad tracks. It was snow on the ground. Buddy came over for the weekend, and wasn't a whole lot to do with snow on the ground, so we figured, well, let's go to our other buddy's house who lived about a mile from me, and we couldn't go through the trail through the woods because snow on the ground, we couldn't find the trail. So we decided to walk down the road and then hit the railroad tracks that went by my friend John's house. So we got almost to John's place through the stand of timber, and we found some intestines lying between the rails.
Oh.
And there was no footprints anywhere. And we thought, well, how the heck did these get here? And it was too much for, some bird to be flying over and dropped, and it wasn't anything like that. They were just kind of there. And if you were to picture this place, it was kind of along the side of a hill. So to our left was the upside of the hill, and then to the right was the downside, and there was a kind of a crude fire access road on either side of this railroad line. And we could see there was nothing below us, nothing disturbed the snow, nothing the way we came. So I told my buddy Mark to go on ahead up the line, the tracks, and I was going to climb the embankment to the left to get up on the other access road to see if there was anything up there. And as soon as I crested that, and it was about 10 or 12 feet up, not real high, there was footprints everywhere, dozens of them. So I hollered for him to come up there, and we seen these big man-like footprints. Of course, they were, twice the size of our feet easily. And we're just kind of looking at this thinking, who the heck's got feet that big, number one, and who's out here walking around barefoot in sub 20-degree weather? And
so you were 14 at that time?
We were 14, and it struck me that the intestines weren't frozen yet. It was only about 17 degrees or so that morning, and they should have frozen pretty quickly. So whatever put them there was still pretty close. And we figured, the culprit was whatever made these footprints, so we took off running. It scared the hell out of us. And we were up there pounding on my buddy John's door, and he had two sisters and 2 younger brothers, and there was just pandemonium, all these kids at once. And his dad come out of the back room, and he says, boys, settle down, what's going on? So we told him what we found. He grabbed a .45 pistol and his camera, and he says, take me up there and show me what you found. So all of us went back up there, and then he took a bunch of pictures and told us afterwards it must have seen something on television. And again, back in 1972, there still wasn't a lot out there on the subject. The Patterson film had been out about 5 years by then, but it still wasn't really out a lot. And I know in my case, we didn't watch a lot of television. We did some, but it was, kid stuff, and my parents. Right. So we were outside most of the time. We lived on farms and stuff. We weren't really sitting around watching TV, so... when he told us that, we were out looking every weekend, looking for the monsters that were in the woods. Never saw anything again after that. But then, 2 years later, it was just about 2 years later. I had my encounter.
You weren't even thinking about it at that point.
I was thinking, skunk or raccoon, something like that. My dog was going crazy after something, so wasn't a skunk or a raccoon.
Yeah, that's quite a surprise when you're looking for something like that, and ooh, gosh.
That's an oh crap moment.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So that thing, was he as surprised to see you as you were to see him?
I would imagine, yeah. He didn't. I don't think it was real happy.
You kind of just stared at each other. Did you get to look into his eyes?
I felt it was kind of a tense moment, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. The eyes we made eye contact with this thing, and we've talked about it afterwards, and I don't remember seeing any whites at all, like any whites to the eyes at all. I don't know if that's something that you could expound on or anything, but I know that we were when you're within 20 feet of something, you're going to be able to see the whites of somebody's eyes. Yeah. And this thing just looked like it had big. I mean, the eyeballs themselves were absolutely huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, huge.
Right.
And I don't know if maybe that has something to do with use for night for the nighttime or just something that they've used, come to, it became adapted to, having to see at night, or you said that they start feeding, right before dark. You say,
and typically through the
pretty
night,
much, they're pretty much not active during the day.
Well, now they're equally active in daytime as night, but a lot of their hunting activity seems to be at nighttime. Of course, a lot of times deer are out feeding at night, so if it's clear enough for them to see, they're going to feed at night. Right.
Right. Now, I've heard some of like the Sierra sounds and some of the recordings of the noises, the screams that these things make, and what I heard was it sounded like a man, screaming as hard and as high as he possibly could. But I mean, the lung power that this thing would have had, that had to have on it. I mean, it was enough to make your ears ring. And
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to even compare that. I mean, I can compare them to the audio that I've heard from the internet, but
Right.
but being so close to this thing, I don't know if there's anything to the infrasound that you hear people talk about.
Yeah.
But I can see just the
sheer
decibels
volume.
that this thing.
Yeah.
Just the volume that this thing has behind it is enough to freeze you momentarily.
Absolutely.
I don't know about the infrasound, whether it's enough to make people sick or anything like that, but I know it's enough to stun. It stunned us, and you wouldn't think it's possible for something to be so damn loud.
Well, when you look at the
It's
size of
incredible.
the lungs, the size of the animal, and then
Yeah.
it's got to have huge lung capacity. So yeah, they're going to have some real volume behind them. I've heard some extremely loud vocals myself over the years I've done this, and there's one in particular that really stands out from the Olympic Mountains. My girlfriend at that time and I took a little walk up the river after dinner, again right at dusk, and this thing cut loose on this ridge that divided the North Fork and the main fork of the Quinault River, and it was just what you described, very similar. It was so loud, this long. It was just a scream, and it wasn't a scream like a mountain lion or anything like that. It was nothing like that. It would have been more. It was a little deeper sound. It's really difficult to describe it. A friend of mine in Maine has been getting a lot of recordings near his home of a group of these things that have been hanging around there, and I can send you a few pieces of audio that he sent me, and you might.
Oh yeah, that'd be
you
great.
might find that interesting. But he's heard the same thing. These very loud screams, and there's nothing really to compare it to because there's nothing else that sounds like it.
Yeah, it's like you've heard the expression blood curdling, a blood curdling scream, or
Absolutely.
It's kind of like somebody being murdered. It's horrendous. I mean, I've woken up out of my sleep countless times hearing that, and if I'd have never heard that noise, I think I'd be better for it. I mean, I wouldn't take back that experience for anything, but just oh man.
Yeah.
And you hear stories about people actually being physically attacked by these things. The sheer trauma that would follow something like that. Oh my goodness, you could never sleep again.
Some of the stories I've heard, and I'll tell you one, and everybody knows, of course, knows about the subject, knows about the Legend of Boggy Creek.
Right.
They've seen the original film. There was one sequence where there was, I think it was two couples and a younger boy, and this thing reached through the window of the house, and a lot of that stuff really did happen. When the guys went outside after that incident where it reached through the window and scared everybody, in the film it shows one guy kind of getting beat up a little bit, and he's traumatized and goes to the hospital. I have a friend who's a cop who knows that guy, the real individual.
Oh, really?
Who to this day refuses to talk to anybody about it publicly. But what he told me was, my cop buddies, that this thing actually was still on the porch, and he happened to be bringing up the rear when the three guys went out, and it mauled him. It knocked him down, and it actually, and again, you go back to look at what other primates think, like chimps, gorillas, and such will do. And if you look at the way chimps do things with their hands, like when you'll see them do like a drum roll on something, the ground or whatever, they do it with the back of their hands. And this thing, this Sasquatch, it beat the hell out of this guy with the back of its hands. And
wow.
it bruised him up pretty good, but You know, and another story, my same cop buddy, he's had a little access to some pretty interesting ones, and I've told this before, had him actually tell it before on the show, where one of his friends, I guess inadvertently angered this creature by spraying it. He was watering his tomatoes, and the thing come by, and he was shocked, you know, this thing's broad daylight, come walking by him, and he's where he had his tomatoes, and he sprayed it with the water hose, and it took off running. Well, a few months later, it came back. He was gone for a while, and he was taking a nap, and where he lived was so far out, you know, he didn't really lock his doors or anything, and somehow this thing got the door open, got in his house. And
my
he
God.
woke up, it was standing over him. And as soon as it saw him open his eyes, it pounced on him and proceeded to throw him around the room like a rag doll. And then in the course, and he was a big guy, you know, 6'2", 6'4", something like that. But threw him around like he was nothing. And in the course of him fighting back, somehow it got his part of his hand in its mouth and bit one of his fingers off. And
My gosh.
it was totally tore his house up. I mean, I've heard some pretty amazing stories.
I'm guessing that fella moved. I mean, did he go back and continue to live there?
Well, actually, the government ended up buying his house from him, and now it's gone. There's no house out,
that's
really,
convenient. Yeah, okay.
That's another whole story in itself, but
Yeah. I got you.
but you know, like
Wow.
with this violent behavior that you saw, it's not uncommon. I can tell you numerous stories that people have told me with very similar kinds of behaviors.
Yeah. Now, so getting into your house, that's
That's
a
pretty
whole.
scary. That's pretty scary.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a story I've heard about the siege of Hanobi. Did I say that right?
Right. I interviewed the guy about his story. That was it's interesting.
My goodness, I'd heard. I can't remember what I was listening to, but I'd heard something about how that things were trying to get into his house, or he had a niece or something that it scared the hell out of, and then tried to get in his house. And I can't remember exactly what I heard, but something about them trying to get in his house.
Yeah, well, they were, and not just that situation, there were a lot of them. I have a lot of people that contact me privately that don't ever want any kind of attention. They just want help getting rid of the creatures. And I can give you an example. One guy, and he's had young couple, some little kids, and these things were coming right up to their windows, and they kept, staring at the kids at night, and they were afraid for their lives, and we eventually got rid of the creatures. But they'll approach, even my friend Don in Maine, with the ongoing situation I was telling you about, he's got, they'll place objects where, his light sensors will trigger, the lights come on, and they kind of testing to see how close they can get, and without being seen and things like that. So they're not stupid. I mean, they're pretty intelligent, highly intelligent creatures. Of course, all primates, I've said this many times before, are the smartest creatures on the planet. Everybody likes to compare dolphins and dogs and everything else to humans. Those animals are nowhere near as intelligent as primate species are, and it's a huge gulf of difference.
Right. I mean, the use of tools and things like that. I mean, now, does lights, you've heard, campfires and stuff like that seem to keep them away. Are they afraid of like spotlights type flashlights, or?
Well, it's just depending. Like people. There's some differences. Some are, some aren't. It depends on
how used to they are.
Yeah, their experience and their temperament.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, there's so many different variables.
Absolutely.
And it's so frustrating to try to get that across to somebody who just absolutely won't hear of it. You know, you're stupid. You're crazy. You're a dreamer. Those are fairy tales, man. And you can talk till you're blue in the face to some people, and that they're never going to buy into it. And there's no point in arguing with people like that, because
Right.
they're going to believe what they want to believe, no matter what you say. Until that day, they're out in their tree stand, and they see something, and then
They go out and have their own underwear changing moment.
exactly.
Well, listen, Troy, we're just about out of time. I'm going to have you back on with a couple of friends, and we'll do a discussion that I think will be interesting if you're interested in doing that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Oh, man, I appreciate you having me on. It's good to be able to talk to somebody, you know. You talk to people all the time that kind of shake and nod and give you that, okay, whatever kind of look. But I appreciate the conversation, man. You keep on doing what you're doing, man.
And you keep in touch with me, and I'm going to send you some stuff, and we'll continue this discussion.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.